Imagine a boy who can't move. His body is locked in plaster. His garage is outside the window. His dream is rusting right in front of his eyes. Winter, 1998. The room is silent. Only the wind outside, and a green cursor blinking on a black screen. Ready. Ready for what? The boy thinks. It's not an engine, not a tool, not danger. It's an old computer discarded as junk. He presses a key, then another, and suddenly the screen comes alive. An endless stream of words flows downward. The machine obeys, again and again and again. In that moment, he realizes something terrifying. He no longer needs his hands to control the world. Now, fast forward. The same boy. A basement. Darkness. Wires. A soldering iron. At school, he's a shadow. In the basement, he becomes a ghost. And at exactly 6 p.m., the desk lamp turns on by itself. Not magic. Code. If code can turn on a light, it can start an engine. If it can start an engine, it can move a machine. And if it can move a machine, without a human inside. Now, one more jump in time. The garage. A scream. A father drops to his knees. 200 kilograms of metal. A broken back. Work at risk. A family on the edge. And the boy goes back to the basement one last time. No games, no sleep, no margin for error. 14 nights later, he hands his father a joystick from an old game console and says, "Just move your thumb." Metal rises into the air. No pain, no strain, no words. In that moment, it becomes clear. This is no longer a story about technology, not even about genius. It's a story about the moment when code became compassion. But the hardest test is still ahead. The world outside the basement doesn't forgive mistakes. And 20 minutes before his biggest presentation, everything will break. Hello, we continue the story of the life of one boy who will change the world. Part 2. Digital Ghost, 1998 to 2003. Chapter 1. Plaster and the Flickering Cursor, Winter, 1998. The 6 months following the accident were hell for Elias. But it was the hell of immobility. His left arm was broken in 2 places. His collarbone was fractured. Doctors encased him in a cast from his neck to his waist. For a guy who was used to experiencing the world through touch and movement, it was tantamount to imprisonment. He sat in the living room watching the snow cover the yard. He could see his garage, where the remains of the hawk were rusting, but he couldn't go there. "You need to find a hobby that won't kill you, Eli," Sarah said one evening. She brought home a large box labeled "School Property, Discarded." Inside was a computer, an old yellowed Commodore that the school had thrown out, replacing it with newer models. Elias looked at it with contempt. "It's just a typewriter with a screen, Mom. There's no engine in it." "There's logic in it," Sarah replied, plugging in the monitor. "You figured out how a gear works. Try to figure out how this works." For the first week, he just stared at the blinking green cursor on the black screen. Ready. The message annoyed him. Ready for what? He pressed the keys, and letters appeared on the screen. It was boring. No grease, no risk. But one day he found a worn book in a box. Basic for Beginners. He opened it out of boredom. He read about the print command, then about the go-to loop. He typed 10, print, Hello world. 20. Go to. 10. Run. The screen exploded with a stream of words. Hello world, running down in an endless river. Elias froze. He didn't build anything with his hands. He just wrote a string of characters. But the machine carried out his command. It did so endlessly until he said, "Stop." He felt the same chill he had felt at the top of the mountain. This is not a typewriter, he realized. It's a transmission. Only instead of gears, there are words. Chapter 2. The Ghost's Basement, 1999 to 2000. When the cast was removed, Elias did not run outside to play soccer. He moved into the basement. He became the ghost. At school, he became a shadow. He sat in class, mechanically writing down the material while building algorithms in his head. His grades were perfect in physics and mathematics, and terrible in literature and history. Teachers told his parents, "He's smart, but he's not with us." His real life began at 4 p.m. The basement had changed. His father's workbench had been moved. Now it was dominated by Frankenstein, a computer that Elias had assembled from 3 different discarded machines. He understood the main problem with computers at that time. They only existed in the virtual world. Elias wanted code to control reality. He began to study input-output ports, LPT ports. "Why do you need this bunch of wires?" his father asked as he descended into the basement. Thomas had aged. His back was bending more and more. "I want it to turn on the light," Elias muttered, without looking up from his soldering iron. He soldered controllers. He connected delicate microchips to rough relays from trucks. It was magic. He wrote code. If time equals 1800, then port A equals 1. And at exactly 6 p.m., the table lamp turned on by itself. It seemed like a small thing, but Elias saw the future in it. If he could turn on a lamp, he could start an engine. If he could start an engine, he could make a car move without a person. Chapter 3. Project Argus, The Hand of the Father, 2001. Elias was 16. He was tall and thin, with pale skin from living in the basement, and eyes that were always red from staring at the monitor. The crisis came quietly. Elias Vent had always been strong, but years of working with heavy metal in the cold had taken their toll. One evening, Elias heard a scream from the garage. He ran out and saw his father kneeling next to a dismantled tractor engine. Thomas was clutching his back, his face gray with pain. "Dad?" "It's okay," Thomas croaked, trying to get up. "It's just the damn cylinder block. It's heavy, damn it. I'm getting old, son. My hands don't work anymore." Thomas couldn't work for the next 2 weeks. And for the Vent family, not working meant not eating. Orders were piling up. Customers were starting to call other mechanics. Elias saw the despair in his father's eyes. Thomas felt like useless scrap metal. Elias returned to the basement. He put away his textbooks. He deleted his games. He took out his drawings. "You're not old, Dad," he whispered. "You just need an upgrade." He worked 14 nights in a row. He took the hydraulic cylinders from a scrapped forklift. He welded a rough but sturdy frame that attached to the garage ceiling beam. It was a mechanical manipulator arm. But the important thing wasn't the metal. The important thing was the controls. Elias used a joystick from an old Sega game console. He wrote a program that read the joystick's movements and smoothly controlled the hydraulic valves. He added a stabilization system to keep the load from swaying, using the pendulum formulas his mother had taught him. On the morning of the 15th day, he called his father into the garage. Thomas limped in. He saw a strange contraption hanging from the ceiling, a claw made of metal, wires, and hoses. "What is this, Eli? Another toy?" "No, this is Argus, your third hand." Elias handed his father the joystick. "Just push forward." Thomas touched the lever suspiciously. With a quiet hum, electric valves, the mechanical arm smoothly lowered itself, precisely above the engine that Thomas had been unable to lift 2 weeks earlier. "Now press the grab button." The claw clamped down on the cylinder block. "Now up." Thomas barely moved his thumb. 200 kilograms of metal flew into the air like a feather. No strain on his back, just a slight movement of his finger. Thomas stood looking at the engine hanging in the air. He turned to his son. There were tears in his eyes. "You did this. For me? Iron should work for us, Dad, not us for it." That day, Elias felt for the first time that technology was not just a toy. It was a tool of mercy. It restored his father's dignity. Chapter 4. Project Zenith, Fall 2002. Elias was 17. It was his last year of school. While his classmates were choosing tuxedos for prom and discussing colleges with good football teams, Elias was watching the news. That summer, Montana was burning again. Fires destroyed thousands of acres of forest. The news showed exhausted firefighters saying the same thing. "We can't see the fire until it's right on top of us. The smoke obscures everything. We're blind." Elias sat in his basement. On the table lay a model airplane, a simple foam glider with a wingspan of 2 meters. "You need eyes," he said to the glider. That's how the Zenith project was born. It was technical madness for 2002. At that time, drones were only used by the military, large predators. Elias wanted to make an autonomous reconnaissance aircraft out of junk. He mounted a cheap webcam, which he had gutted from its plastic casing, in the nose of the plane. But the main problem was not the plane, but the brain. How to transmit video? Wi-Fi was weak and rare at the time. Radio channels had low bandwidth. Elias realized that he didn't need to transmit high-quality video. He needed to transmit data. He started writing an algorithm in C++. It was a primitive version of computer vision. The program did not see trees. It scanned pixels. If a group of pixels was gray, smoke, and rapidly expanding against a green background, forest, alarm, send GPS coordinates. He slept 2 hours a day. His eyes burned. The code consisted of thousands of lines. When he first ran the simulation on his Frankenstein, the processor heated up so much that you could fry eggs on it. But the algorithm worked. It found smoke in the test image. Chapter 5. Silicon Coliseum, May 2003. The national finals of the Intel International Science and Engineering Fair, Intel ISEF, were held in a huge expo center in Cleveland. It was a different world, sterile, rich, noisy. Elias stood at his booth, number 404, irony of fate. He was wearing a cheap suit that his parents had bought on sale. The suit hung loosely on him. His hands, marked with burns from a soldering iron and scratches, looked out of place against the snow-white tablecloths. All around him were children from elite private schools. "Nice foam, buddy," said a boy from the neighboring booth, which featured a shiny robot dog that his parents had bought in Japan and slightly reprogrammed. "Is this a labor lesson?" Elias remained silent. He was checking Zenith. And then the worst happened. Something went wrong during transport. When Elias connected the plane to his laptop for diagnostics, the screen flashed red. Error. CPU overheat. System halted. The main image processing chip, taken from an old video card, had overheated. The heatsink had fallen off. There were 20 minutes left before the judges arrived. Without cooling, the algorithm would kill the processor in a minute of flight. Panic. Cold, sticky panic. Elias looked around. He didn't have any thermal paste. He didn't have any tools. He ran to the vending machine. He bought a can of ice-cold cola. He returned to the stand. He took out his pocket knife. He tore the label off the can. He cut out a piece of aluminum. He pressed the aluminum against the hot chip. It wasn't enough. Then he saw the cooler on the rich guy's booth, a small fan that just blew confetti for effect. "Gimme that." Elias didn't ask. He demanded. "Are you crazy? That's my—" Elias snatched the fan and ripped out the wires. He twisted the wires with his fingers and wrapped them with a piece of electrical tape he always carried in his pocket. He screwed the fan onto the Zenith right on top of the cut aluminum, using paper clips as fasteners. It looked terrible, like a pile of junk. "Next, Elias Vent, Montana," announced the judge. Chapter 6. The Eyes of God. Elias took the stage. In his hands he held the Zenith, with wires sticking out of it and a piece of a soda can. The audience laughed quietly. The judges, professors from MIT and Caltech, exchanged skeptical glances. "What is this, young man?" asked the head of the jury. "This is the future of fire safety, sir." Elias's voice trembled, but only for a second. "Project Zenith. Autonomous search for sources of ignition." "Autonomous? In 2003? With this equipment?" The professor raised an eyebrow. "Well, show us." Elias launched the aircraft. It was prohibited in the hall, but he blocked the engine, turning on only the brain. He displayed the image from the camera on a large screen. The audience saw a blurry image of the hall. Elias took out a lighter. "The system searches for thermal and visual smoke patterns," he explained. He clicked the lighter. The flame was tiny. Nothing. "Come on," Elias mentally shouted. The homemade cooler hummed like a bumblebee. He held a piece of paper to the flame. Smoke rose. A red square suddenly appeared on the screen, clearly outlining the smoke. "Alert detected. Coords locked." The hall fell silent. Elias began to walk around the stage. The square stuck to the smoke. It did not lose its target, despite the shaking and poor lighting. "This isn't just a camera," Elias said into the silence. "It's mathematics. This drone can patrol forests 24/7. It costs $200. How much does one fire helicopter flight cost?" Someone in the back row began to applaud. Then someone else. The MIT professor stood up. He wasn't looking at the drone. He was looking at Elias. "How did you optimize the code for such a weak processor?" he asked. "I threw out everything unnecessary," Elias replied. "The beauty of code is not in its complexity, it's in efficiency." Chapter 7. One-Way Ticket. August 2003. He didn't just win. He won the Grand Prix. A month later, a letter arrived. A thick envelope with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, logo. A full scholarship. Departure day. Thomas's old pickup truck was loaded with belongings. Elias took very little with him. Clothes, his old laptop, and a photo of Thunderhawk. Sarah cried as she hugged her son. "Don't forget to eat, Eli, and call." Thomas was the last to approach. He held out his hand, the same hand that his son's manipulator had once saved. The handshake was firm. "You've outgrown this valley, son," his father said. "These mountains, they're too low for you. Fly." Elias got on the bus. As Black Creek began to disappear around the bend, he looked out the window. He saw the Silver Hope mine, where he had found the pump. He saw Eagle's Descent, where he had broken his body but tempered his spirit. He felt no sadness. He opened his notebook. On the first page he wrote, "Goal: change the world. Status: loading."